Hello and welcome to the video for SAM Projects 2013. This is the Excel 3 video. So we're going to go to the pull up a browser and go to the SAM website, log in with our student account or your student account, get away from the calendar view to the activity list view, make sure that always available is unselected and projects are selected, and we can find the project in question, Excel 3 in this case. 5 attempts, so let's get started. We have the instruction file, we have the start file, and we have the upload link. So let's get the instruction file loaded first. I'm going to say enable editing right here in the top ribbon so that the ribbon is visible and I can now move through this sheet. This project, we're creating a timesheet for a company. And that's actually nice. It's a good example of what a spreadsheet can do. So this is a nice project we'll be working on. Before we get started, we will download the start file that has your name _1. We will save it as your name _2. The only thing we're changing is the 1 to the 2. And we will make sure that cell B6 has your name. Once you've done those things, you're ready to get started with the project. So let's do that. Let's take the start file. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to say enable editing up here on the top window to pull up the ribbon, and inside the ribbon I'm going to select File Save As, so I can save it on my computer. I save it on my desktop, and I want to name this _2 instead of _1. I'm also going to get rid of the copy of at the beginning here. Getting rid of the copy of. Okay, now the full name is Excel 2013 T3 P1A student name _2, but none of that is changing except the _2 at the end. And I'm saving this on my desktop so I know where it's at when I'm ready to upload at the end. Okay, so let's get back here to our project. We got the instructions and we've got our start file, so we're ready to go. We'll upload this in just a second. I didn't mean to. Could have left that window open because I want to upload here in the end, but I'm not ready to upload at this point. Okay, here's what I want are the instruction documents. So step 1, first thing we want to do is we want to go to the employee list worksheet and select a range A1, B1 and use the format painter to copy the format there. So the employee list worksheet is what it says in the instructions, employee list worksheet, A1, B1, format painter. So here's A1, B1, and I can see that it's a different font here, Calibri 14 it looks like it is, and I want to copy that down to this range. The way I do that is select the target or the desired format, and then in the Home tab, in this leftmost group area, the clipboard group, there is a little paintbrush, the format painter. I can select the format painter, and then whatever is selected, that is the formatting that I'm going to copy. And here's the range I want to copy it, so now they all have the Calibri 14 font. So it's a nice way to make sure you're using the exact same format, not trying to do it by eyeball, but getting the exact same format that you want on that range A2, B9, which we just selected. In cell B1, on the same sheet we're in, enter BS001. And in cell B1, enter BS001. And then in cell B2, enter CG001. So here's B2, CG001. And then in cell B3, DH001. DH001. Now what you may see there, oops, it kind of popped up, I don't know if you saw that, DH001. As I'm typing this, it's doing this fill for me where it's realizing what's going on with my functionality here. These letters are related to the data in column A. It's the first name and the last name. Abbreviation. So Brendan Stevenson is BS, and Callie Gagawa, if I'm pronouncing Callie's name correctly, is the CG, and so on. So the first 2 letters are abbreviations of the person's names, and then the 001 is the same on all those. So as I'm typing this third one in, you can notice that it kind of filled in for me the rest of the values. It was anticipating what was most likely going to be the case. And as I see that grayed in, filled out, if I just hit enter at that point, it will fill that for me using the same idea. So it's using KB for Ken Bradley, MT, PD. These are abbreviations. Now let me do this just slightly different because that fill may not have always popped up there. There's another way of doing this. If it hadn't done it for me automatically as I was typing it. I could have gone to the ribbon, to the data group, and done the flash fill. And the flash fill is the same thing. It was automating that for me, or I can do it manually in the data tab using the flash fill function. Okay, we'll click back on home because most of the things we do are in the home group. But that's a way of getting that flash fill to work. It'll do it automatically, or I can use the tool itself. Step 3. On the employee timesheet worksheet, merge in cell A1, D1, and then format it using the title cell style. Okay, so A1, D1, employee timesheet, A1, D1, merge in center, and then the title cell style. So cell styles, title is right there. Okay. And then step 9, merge and center A2, D2, and then change the font to Arial and 14 point. So A2, D2, merge and center, and we make this Arial in my drop-down list here, and 14 point. I'll double check that that's what it said. Arial 14 point. Yes, that's correct. Step number 5, format the range A9 to D9 using the heading 3 cell style, and then center the range A9, D9. So A9, D9 is right here. I want to, what were the steps there? I want to do heading 3 and then center. So cell style, heading 3. And you can see right now that they're left aligned. Day and date and hours and earnings are left aligned. I want to center align, which is in the alignment group there. So now those values, day, date, hours, earnings, are centered in their columns. Okay, very good. Step 6, which expands onto the next sheet. It does. A little longer step here. In cell C5, create a formula using the VLOOKUP, the value lookup function, to look up the value in cell C4 in the current worksheet from the range A1 to B9 on the employee list worksheet, and then return the value in the second column of that A1, B9 range. Use false as a last argument in the VLOOKUP function so that the VLOOKUP only works for a specific match. It only returns a value if there's a specific match. So what this is saying is I'm going to, in cell C5, I'm going to create a function called VLOOKUP, and then left parenthesis, and we have 4 arguments in the VLOOKUP function. First of all is the value we want to look up. In this case, it's the value in C4, just a person's name, Devon Hastings. And that's you can see in the argument list right here, that this first value is the VLOOKUP value. And then I have to hit, notice VLOOKUP is what's highlighted. When I press a comma, it moves to the second argument. So commas delineate items in a list. And now I have 1 comma, so I'm working on the second item in the list, and that's the table array. Now the table array, this is where we're looking for the name Devon Hastings or Devon Hastings, and I want to look at it from the employee list group. So in the employee list group, it's one of these values, hopefully. Okay. And I'm not just selecting the A column, I'm also selecting A and B column because the A column is the value I'm looking for, and the B column is the value that I want to return. Now on my little VLOOKUP function here, you'll see something that you may not have seen very often before, but in the range A1, B9 is preceded by the worksheet name, and you see employee list inside of quotes, and the reason there are quotes around employee list is because there's a space in the name, and then a bang operator or an exclamation point, which is the notation that follows the worksheet before the range. So this notation here, the name of a worksheet, bang or exclamation point, and then the range. So this just means that I'm getting this on a different sheet, comma. So now I've done the first value, the lookup value, the second value, the array that I'm looking up from, the table array. The third argument here is called the column index number. And what this is meaning is in my table array, I want column 2, the second column, to be the value that is returned. So that's my column index number. And then the instruction said to do one more thing there, which is to go to the optional 4th argument and to actually specify false so that I have to have an exact match. One of the things that VLOOKUP can do is you can also use it as a range of values to get things in a ballpark or something. Here, I don't want to return an employee ID number unless I actually have that employee. So I want to be precise here, and I'll use the last argument, false, as my fourth value there. So I can double click that, or I can press enter when it's selected. Either way, and right parenthesis to close the argument list. So what this is doing is it's getting this value that I just entered in cell C5, DH001. Where is that value coming from? It's coming from this sheet, the employee list sheet. It's coming from this range of values in the second column based on the value in the first column. So because it matches this value, I'm returning this DH001. Because that value matches that. And if I were to change this name here to be somebody else on the employee list, I would get their employee number, and it would pull it out automatically. Okay, so that was a long step, but hopefully that makes sense. It's very nice to use this VLOOKUP function to be able to get data from another list or a table, another sheet, and to be able to pull that in conveniently. And that can be for getting prices for certain products. If you've got a list of products, you want to know the price for the product, you can use the VLOOKUP function. That way, if you have the name of the product or the ID for the product and it'll give you the price, you can use it in a number of other functions. It's something that you might see again in the future, very possibly, as you keep working with Excel. Step 7. In cell B7, use the today function. Now, the today function is much easier than the function we just looked at. In B7 right here, the today function is just today, and again, because it's a function, you have to have parentheses. I'm going to leave the parentheses off on purpose to show you that it generates an error, but functions begin with an equal sign. Formulas of functions begin with an equal sign, and functions have an argument list, even if it's an empty argument list like we have in this case. So left parenthesis, right parenthesis, with nothing between them, gives us the today function. And it returns the day that this video was recorded. Your date is going to be different. It's going to be the date that you're working on the assignment. So you don't want to hard code this date. You want to use the today function, and it will show you the day that you're recording that you're doing your work right now. Step 8 says to go to the use the autofill for the range B11, B23 based on B10. So here's B10. And it's formatted a certain way. And I want to use this for this range coming down here. And I use the autofill, I believe it said. Yes, use the autofill. So the autofill function will allow me to take the value I want and grab the handle in the bottom right and drag down. So by dragging the bottom right corner of the target cell, I'm getting this autofill. So it's taking, it took the 10/1/2016 date, and it figured out based on the context that 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's putting those values into the date for me. Again, now when you use the autofill, double check your data real quick and make sure you're interpreting it correctly. You can very easily visually verify that the data it's assuming you want is actually the data you want. But it saves you a lot of typing, and it's very nice. Step 9 is a little bit longer step again. We're going to use an if function, I believe. In cell D10, create a formula that uses the if function to check the value in cell C10 if it's equal to 0. If it is equal to 0, then the current cell should be empty. In other words, if C10 is empty, then the if function is empty. The else condition, the B part of this, is that if the condition's false and it's not empty, then we want to return a calculation. Specifically C10 times D7, the hours worked times the hourly rate. And then we're going to use a relative and absolute function so that we can copy the formula in a second. So before I get to the relative absolute function, let's see what we're doing here. In cell D10, use the if function, and I want to see, is this hours equal to 0? We'll see that on day 1, this person worked 8 hours, 8.5 quarter hours, 7 hours. But on some of these days, like days 6, 7, and 8, or 6 and 7, didn't work any hours. And likewise, days 13 and 14, no hours. So this equals function, let me start over again, equals if the value in C10 is equal to 0, comma. That's the first argument is the test. The second argument is the value to return if the test is true. If you didn't work any hours, then I'm just going to put double quotes with no space between them side by side. This means we're going to return an empty string, a blank string. Because if you worked 0 hours, the condition is true, you worked 0 hours, then obviously you didn't get any pay that day, comma. The third argument is the false argument. If hours worked is not 0, then you should get paid for that day. And specifically, the pay is hours times rate. And rate is here in D7. So looking up in the bar, I can see this formula a little easier here. If hours worked is 0, then no pay. Otherwise, it's hours times rate. And I can press enter there, and I can see that 8 hours worked at $16 an hour made $136 and some change for that particular day's pay. Now I want to copy this formula, go back to our instructions here, use a relative reference for the hours in C10 and an absolute reference for the rate in D7 so that the formula can be copied. I know what I'm about to do is copy this formula all the way down. But as I look at the formula, this value in D7 is a fixed value. So I'm going to edit my formula here and put $signs in front of the column and the row to make this a fixed reference. Now, because I have a fixed reference there, I can copy this value. So again, select the cell, put the cursor in the bottom right-hand corner, and just drag it down. And it's copying that formula. And as I look at any one of these, just pick one at random, I'll see that it's using the hours immediately to the left of the if function, but it's using the hourly rate in the fixed cell D7. So it's not copying with us. And you'll see in these situations where there were 0 hours worked, our if function did not return any value there because that's what that first condition is. If hours equals 0, like it does in these two cells, then we return an empty string. Same with these two cells. But if it's not 0, then we return a value. Okay, so we did step 9 and step 10. Step 10 is where we copy the if function in D10 down, and it works if we have the absolute reference in there. Step 11 says in cell C24, create a formula that uses the sum function to total cells C10 to C23. In cell C24, okay, there it is, use the sum function, C10, C23. So equals sum, left parenthesis, and I can type in or manually hover over, click over C10, C23. And I can hit the right parenthesis and enter, or I can just press enter and it will close the formula out for me. That's something that actually in the old version of Office 2010, you had to manually close that parenthesis on the function. Now in 2013, it's smart enough to close that function for you. So that's actually a nice thing. In cell D24, go over one column, enter a formula that does the sum of D10, D23. So we're going to do another sum function here. In D24, we're going to say equals sum D10, D23 release, and right parenthesis enter, or I could have just pressed enter without it. Format C10, C24 with the number format showing 2 decimal places. C10, C24, number format. So in the home tab, numbers group, in the little drop-down box at the top, there is a number option, second option there. And I want to make sure it has 2 decimals. It does. I could add or remove decimals here, but I don't need to. It's already showing 2 decimal places. Format D7 with the currency number format showing 2 decimal places, and then format D10, D24 with that same format. So D7 and D10, D24 are currency number format, 2 decimal places. D7 is right here. I want this to be currency format. So again, I'll use in the home group, in the numbers tab, I'll come down to the third option, which is the currency option, and I'll confirm that it has 2 decimal places, and it does. And I want to use that same format for, what was the range? D10, D24. So I'll select that, and I will say currency. Format the range A24 to D24 bold and an outside border. So A24 is right here, D24 is right here, bold, and then a border is here in the same font group in the drop-down list in the middle, and outside borders is an option there. And then our last four steps here are C26, C27, C28, and C29. C26, create a formula that uses the max function for the C10, C23 range. So C26 equals the max function of the range C10 to C23. So we're taking the hours worked for this employee and we're finding what was the most hours worked. Then on C27, we're doing the minimum function, C10 to C23. So the min function for C10, C23, which again are the hours worked. So the most on any day, the longest day, this employee worked 8 3/4 hours. The shortest day was a day that the employee didn't work during these 2-week window. Step 18 for C28 is the average function. What was the average that we did? So equals average, the range, C10, C23. So worked 5.8 hours on average, 5 4/5 hours, almost 6 hours on average. And then finally in cell C29, create a formula that multiplies the value in C28, the average, times 7 days per week. So the average hours per day, 5.8, times 7. So I'm going to say equals this cell value times 7 days per week. And it turns out this employee averaged 40 hours a week in our little sheet here. Your worksheet should look like the final figures on the following pages. Save and close, exit and upload. So before I save and close, I'm going to do a real quick check. I'm going to make sure that my employee timesheet looks kind of like this, and I see that it does. So it looks kind of the same there. So those look pretty good. And looking at the instructions, I'm going to make sure that the employee list sheet has the correct 001s with initials, and I think that's what we have for all those values. Okay, so I feel pretty good about what we've got here. So I'm going to save my work, a little save icon. I'm going to close it. I'm going to close the instruction file. So I've got everything saved and closed on my desktop. I know where I'm going, so when I upload, I know I'm uploading the correct file. This one is, make sure I get the right name here, the NPT3. So the NPExcel3 project is the one that I want to upload. If I type in the wrong one, it won't let me upload it. So I don't have to worry about that. I know I have to do it. 3 green check marks is always very good. Let's see how our results were. Let's go to our report here, our Excel 3 file. Let's download our report and see how we did. And as we look at this, again, we get a score 100 out of 100. If you make any mistakes, look at the X's that you missed, make changes based on what you missed, go back and rewatch the step, and submit again. If you have multiple misses, don't use up all 5 of your attempts without seeking out your instructor for help, unless you think you can figure out what's going on. Okay, thank you. Have a very good day.